I was halfway down the porch steps when I saw her. Not a shadow, not a stray dog, not a deer. A lynx stood at the edge of my yard where the grass gives up and the pines begin. She didn't move like an animal hunting. She moved like something holding itself together out of habit. My house sits under the forest, close enough that on windy nights the branches tap the roof like fingers. I've lived here long enough to tell the difference between normal silence and the kind that means something is watching. That morning, the silence had weight. I'm an old man, and I live the way old men do when the world has already taken most things from them. I keep my tools in the same places. I stack firewood before the first cold nights. I sweep the porch even when nobody visits. Out here, under the forest, habits are what keep you steady. That's why seeing her there felt like a crack in the routine. I didn't want a story. I wanted my quiet day. I also know this land. The ridge behind my house rises fast, and the trees make a wall that can hide anything. In summer, hikers cut through on the old logging road. In winter, trucks sometimes slide on the bend and end up in my ditch. People come close enough to wave, but not close enough to understand how quickly things can go wrong in the woods. When I first spotted the lynx, my mind ran through the same checklist it always does. No sudden movement, no food in my hand, no cornering. Give her space to leave. I stayed where I was and listened for other sounds, for a second animal, for cubs, for anything that might explain why she'd risked coming near a house. There was nothing, just her breathing and the slow creak of branches. I thought about calling the county wildlife line. I even picked up the phone later and stared at the numbers on the sticker by the fridge. Then I put the phone down, not because I didn't want help, but because I knew what help sometimes looks like. A truck, a cage, a decision made fast. And a hungry mother does not survive fast decisions. So I chose the smallest option left to me, a little food, a lot of distance, and no promises. The lynx kept her head low. Her ears were up, but not sharp. Her coat looked rough, the way it does after a hard season. When she breathed, I could see the ribcage working. She wasn't charging. She wasn't curious. She was measuring me the way any tired creature measures risk. I froze with one boot on the step and one on the porch. My first thought was the old rule I'd learned as a boy: wild is wild. You don't touch it. You don't teach it that people are easy. Even as I told myself it was just one time, I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like a hand on a door. I wasn't afraid of her teeth. I was afraid of my own softness, the part of me that still believes one careful act can fix what the wild has broken. My second thought came right after. Quieter and worse, she was starving. I have no grand stories about courage. At my age, I don't mistake stubbornness for bravery. I just know what I can do without making things worse. I backed into the house slowly, keeping my hands visible. I didn't slam the door. I didn't rush for a phone. I went to the kitchen like I was making coffee, so my movements stayed ordinary. From the freezer I took a small bag of venison scraps I saved for stew, and from the pantry I grabbed a tin of sardines. Not a feast, just enough smell to carry. At the back door, I paused. My dog used to sit there years ago, tail thumping, ready to chase anything that moved. Now the yard was mine alone. I opened the door just a crack and looked out. She was still there, but farther back, half hidden by the ferns. Her eyes stayed on me. No blinking, no trust, only need. I stepped out slow and walked to the old stump near the woodpile. I set the food on top. Then I walked away. I did not point. I did not call. I didn't make myself big or small. I just became boring, the way you become boring to a storm by refusing to stand in it. Then I sat on the porch bench with my hands folded, like I was waiting for the mail. Minutes passed. My knees started to ache in the familiar way. A jay screamed somewhere in the trees, angry at nothing. The lynx didn't move. I thought maybe I'd misread her. Maybe she wasn't hungry. Maybe she'd leave, and that would be that. When she finally stepped forward, It was not a walk. It was a careful sequence of decisions. One paw, then the other. Stop, listen, smell, look at me. Another paw. She reached the stump, sniffed the meat, and for a moment she lifted her head as if she might bolt. I kept my eyes low, watching without staring. I breathed slow, the way you do when you're trying not to scare a child. She took the venison first, quick, then the sardines. Not greedy, not messy, efficient, like a worker finishing a job. When she was done, she backed away the way she came, never turning her back on me, until the ferns swallowed her again. I sat there a long time after she disappeared. I told myself I'd done the smallest thing possible. I told myself it didn't mean anything. A hungry animal took food. That was all. But as the day went on, that stump felt different, like I had put something on it besides meat. The rest of that first day I tried to act normal. I split wood, washed dishes, listened to the radio low. Still, I kept checking the tree line like a man waiting for bad weather. Near dusk I saw her tracks by the gravel drive in a patch of soft mud. Big pads, clean edges, no wasted steps. She had come close, eaten, and left. That should have calmed me. It did in single quotes. After dark I sat at the kitchen table and faced the hard truth. Feeding a wild cat can get it killed. If she starts coming to houses, someone will call it a threat. Someone will pull a gun. Good intentions can paint a target. So I made myself a rule. If she came back, I would not try to touch her. I would not try to lure her closer. I would do only what reduced harm. That rule sounded simple until I saw those cubs. From the porch, I noticed one of them held its back foot wrong, like it was sore. Another had mud on its muzzle and kept licking at nothing. I took my binoculars from the window shelf and checked them from a distance. The mother's eyes looked dull with fatigue, but steady. The cub's sides moved fast. Too fast. The old man said quietly, I won't be foolish. I placed a small portion on the stump and sat back down, shoulders loose, eyes low. The lynx stepped forward first, ate fast, then backed away and scanned the trees and me like she was counting dangers. Only then did the cubs creep forward, stopping every few feet to watch my hands. One stumbled and caught itself. None of them made a sound. I felt the next mistake waiting. If I stood up, they might scatter. If I fed them too much, they might learn my yard. And I still didn't know which outcome was safer. I only knew the forest had brought them to my door, and my small act had turned into something heavier. And for the first time, I understood the real problem wasn't whether I could help. It was where help ends and responsibility begins. The weather changed the next day, and so did my mood. A low gray sky pressed down on the clearing, and the forest felt closer than usual, like it had taken one careful step toward the house. The air smelled of damp needles and rain that hadn't fallen yet. I woke early, not because I wanted to, but because my thoughts refused to stay quiet. I did not step outside right away. Instead, I watched from the window, the same way you watch a road when you expect a truck that may or may not come. I knew better than to look for them directly. Wild animals notice eyes before they notice bodies. So I let my gaze slide, slow and unfocused, taking in the stump, the woodpile, the edge of the trees. They were there. The lynx lay half hidden in the ferns, her body stretched but tense. Like a coiled rope, the cubs were closer to the open ground, clumsy and unsure. One chased a falling leaf and missed it by a wide margin. Another sat and scratched behind its ear with awkward determination. The smallest stayed close to the mother, bumping into her side as if checking she was still real. They did not belong in a yard. That truth settled in me heavier than the first day's surprise. A forest cat raising cubs near a house is not a sweet scene. It is a risk, for them and for me. By late morning the old logging road came alive. A pickup passed, slow but loud. Then another faster. I heard voices drift through the trees, men laughing, unaware of what lay just beyond the bend. Each sound made the lynx lift her head. Each sound made the cubs freeze. I thought of the soft mud by my drive, of how easy tracks are to follow when someone decides to look. I thought of children with phones, of men who confuse fear with permission. My hands curled against the window frame. This was the part nobody talks about. Feeding is easy. Watching consequences is not. I stepped outside only when I was sure the cubs had moved back into cover. I stayed close to the house, pretending to adjust a loose board on the porch rail. The lynx watched me the whole time. No growling, no threat, just attention. I spoke out loud then, not to her, but to myself. The old man said softly, "You can't fix this by pretending it isn't happening." Around noon, my neighbor stopped by. He doesn't live close, but close enough that we keep an eye on each other's roofs after storms. His name is Harold. He's younger than me, but not by much, and he still thinks his back will forgive him for what his pride asks of it. He leaned on the fence and squinted toward the trees. "Harold said you got something big moving back there." I said maybe. He asked if it was a cat. I said something like that. He told me a hunter had seen tracks up near the ridge and figured a big one had come down with the heat. He laughed, the way men laugh when danger is still theoretical. I nodded and said nothing more than needed. I did not point. I did not explain. I watched his eyes, measured what he noticed and what he didn't. When he left, the silence felt thinner. That was when the choice sharpened. If I did nothing, the lynx would keep the cubs near a place that smelled like food and humans. If someone else noticed, the ending would be quick and ugly. If I did too much, I would teach them the wrong lesson and trap them between hunger and habit. The cub with the sore foot limped when it moved. I saw it clearly then. Not broken, but strained. Enough to slow it down. Enough to make it the first to fall behind. I sat on the porch steps and let the weight of years press down on me. At my age, you stop believing that good intentions count for much. Only outcomes do. I told myself the truth I didn't want to hear. Kindness that ignores consequences is not kindness. It is comfort for the one who gives it. I went inside and called the local wildlife office. I didn't ask for a truck. I didn't ask for cages. I asked questions. I listened. I described what I saw without embellishment. A mother, 3 cubs, close to a house, one limping. The man on the line spoke calmly. He said summer drives animals down. He said mothers move when pressured. He said interference should be minimal, but safety matters. When I hung up, my chest felt tight, like I had agreed to something without knowing the price. In the afternoon, I changed what I did. I moved the food farther from the house, closer to the tree line, near a rocky outcrop that forced a wide view of the road. I reduced the amount, enough to help her regain strength, not enough to anchor her here. I stayed inside while I did it, slipping out only when the clearing was empty. The lynx came later, cautious, unsettled by the change. She circled once, twice. She looked at the house, then at the trees, then at the food. I waited. She made a choice of her own. She took the cubs and moved them deeper, away from the porch, away from the drive. Not far, just enough. Relief washed through me, thin and temporary. As evening fell, I understood something else, something colder. This was only the beginning. I had stepped into a space where every action closed one door and opened another. I sat alone at the table that night, the radio off, the lamp low. I knew that whatever came next, I would not be able to walk away, and I also knew that when the time came, the hardest part would be doing less, not more. 3 days later, the rain finally came. Not a storm, not the kind that knocks branches down, just a steady, soaking fall that turned the yard dark and made the forest breathe out a heavy, wet smell. The logging road softened into mud. The trucks stopped coming. Even the birds stayed quiet. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the kind of tension you get before a hard conversation. When you already know what you have to say, I kept doing what I had decided. Less food, farther from the house. No contact, no habits built. The lynx stayed near but not close. She was moving the cubs, little shifts from one patch of cover to another. Each move was careful. Each move was watched. On the fourth morning I saw why. A man had parked a vehicle near the bend, not a neighbor, not a delivery truck. He stood in the drizzle with his hood up, looking into the trees the way people look when they want to find something. I stayed behind the curtain and watched him for a long minute. He did not come to my porch. He did not wave. He scanned the mud, then pointed at the ground as if talking to someone I couldn't see. Then he walked down the road and disappeared. That single scene told me everything. Someone had noticed. Maybe it was tracks. Maybe it was a glimpse of fur. Maybe Harold had mentioned a cat without thinking. It didn't matter. The moment another person starts looking, the space for a peaceful ending gets smaller. I called the wildlife office again. This time I spoke to the same man. I kept my voice steady. I told him what I'd seen. I told him the cub was still limping. I told him people were prowling. He listened, then said the words I was trying not to say out loud. He said if the mother stays near human structures, the risk goes up. He said if someone tries to approach the cubs, the mother could defend them. He said that is how animals end up shot or trapped. I asked what the right move was. He said the right move is to stop making my yard part of their map. I sat with the phone in my hand after the call ended. My first instinct was to argue. I wanted to say I had been careful. I wanted to say I was reducing harm. I wanted to say I was not like the people who chase or trap. But the truth was simpler and harder. As long as there was food in my yard, I was a point on their route. That evening, when the rain eased, I went outside with a shovel and a bucket. I didn't dig traps. I didn't set anything cruel. I removed what I had added. I cleaned the stump. I scattered old scraps far from the clearing so the smell wouldn't sit in one place. I packed my trash tight. I wiped down the step where sardine oil had dripped days ago. When I finished, I stood by the fence and waited. I didn't wait because I expected thanks. I waited because I needed to see what my decision would do. The lynx appeared near dusk. She came from the same line of ferns, moving low. The cubs followed in a loose cluster, close but not touching. Their coats were cleaner now, their eyes brighter. The limping one still favored its foot, but it was keeping up. She went straight to the stump. Nothing. She paused, head lifted, ears forward. She looked toward the house. I stayed still. I could have broken then. I could have stepped forward, could have tossed a piece of meat, could have made the moment easier for my own conscience. My throat tightened anyway. The lynx took one step closer to the porch than she ever had. Not close enough to threaten me, not close enough to be tame, just close enough to make the distance feel personal. Then she made a low sound, not a yell, not a scream. A brief, rough breath that barely carried in the damp air. The cubs froze. I did not move. There was no miracle in that moment, no understanding in her eyes that matched human words. There was only a mother calculating a change, trying to decide if the world had shifted or if she had. She turned her head toward the trees. One cub hesitated, staring at the porch like it wanted answers. The mother nudged it with her shoulder. The cub wobbled, then followed. They disappeared into the ferns and the wet undergrowth. Silent as smoke, I stood there long after. The next day, I saw no tracks. The day after that, nothing. The forest reclaimed its ordinary sounds. Trucks returned on the road. A pair of hikers passed, boots squishing, talking loudly about the weather. I told myself it was done. Then, 2 weeks later, on a clear morning with a sharp blue sky, I found a single print in the mud by the edge of my property. One, not three, not four, just one large pad mark, clean and deep, as if someone had stepped there to say I'm still alive. I followed it with my eyes to the tree line, but there were no other signs. I didn't chase. I went back to the porch and sat on the bench where I had watched her eat the first day. The sun warmed the wood under my hands. I thought about what it would have been like to keep feeding her, how easy it would have been to build a routine, how good it would have felt. And how quickly that good feeling could have turned into a bullet, a cage, or a dead mother. I am an old man. I have learned that love is not always staying close. Sometimes love is doing the quiet thing that hurts your pride. Real care does not hold on. Real care lets go. And it does it before the world forces its own ending.
Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories. And now just click the playlist or the next video on your screen.